Welcome back to the Team by our YouTube channel. For those of you that...
He's going to say welcome back again because her husband is disturbing you.
Welcome back to the Team by our YouTube channel. My name is Sefia Bayai and I'm joined by Lynn, who is a good friend of ours, and she's also Benjamin's violin teacher. So I've invited her to come and talk about music with you guys. I've got lots and lots of questions and I'm hoping that you guys find it helpful. And so we were actually just having a conversation because I was under the impression that you needed to start with playing the piano. That was like the base instrument.
I may be biased because I'm a violinist, but it seems to be that most instrumentalists and singers, interestingly enough, have started off with a violin.
Really?
Principally because you can get very small instruments, so they fit the size of the child as they grow.
Right.
And also, people say that if you start off with developing certain coordination skills, then it goes on to everything else.
Are there different like classes with the instruments? Like, is it the case that stringed instruments are supposed to be more because the thing is, in private schools, for example, they seem to make room for a lot more scholarships.
In the orchestra, there are many more strings than anything else.
Right.
So you'll have 20, 30 violins, 10 cellos, 12 cellos,
Okay.
10 violas, whatever, but you only have 2 flutes, 2 oboes, 2 clarinets, 2 bassoons, 4 horns.
Okay.
So we need more string players.
Right. Yourself, you play both the violin and the piano.
Yes.
So why did you also learn the piano?
Because you have to have a second study.
Okay. If you're a musician or just generally?
If you're a musician, if you go to music college, which I did, I went to Guildhall.
Okay.
So piano isn't your first study, it has to be your second study. And the reason for that is when you do theory and keyboard harmony and all sorts of things which you have to do, to degree level, then you can't do that on an instrument if it's not the piano, because the piano can make its own harmony because you have 10 fingers.
What's really the ideal age to start?
Really, the ideal age, I would say, if somebody brought an 8-year-old to me, I would say that would be brilliant.
Oh.
So you've got a lot of time. Of course, there are many methods which start them very, very young. The Suzuki method starts them as young as 2.
Oh, wow.
But I could have a huge conversation with you about that. I personally don't agree. I think it's too young. Little tendons can be very seriously damaged. And most people, I would say the vast majority of people who start that young don't continue.
That's interesting.
And my view on that is, I think it's because they associate it with their babyhood.
Suzuki, that sounds like Japanese.
It is Japanese.
Yeah.
I think it's very easy to do with the Japanese child, but not so easy to do with an English child.
Yeah. So in terms of music, the benefits of it, because this is something that I've started to, become slightly privy to, it does a lot for the brain, or just in terms of our development. Could you share a bit more about that?
Well, music itself, with any instrument, uses a lot of the brain. It's a language, it is a science, it's maths, it uses all these different parts of the brain, which is why doctors very often make very good musicians, because it uses similar part. Linguists, we have to be good in languages, for example, which just comes naturally when you read music because of the instructions are usually in Italian or French.
Oh, wow.
Or German sometimes. So we can pretty much understand a lot of languages. So it uses all these parts of the brain, plus the way we do, the way the coordinative stuff goes, either with your fingers or with your fingers and your arms, or just looking, it opens up various channels in the brain. They've done all sorts of research, and it opens up these channels. And on another level, and we all have this, whether we play or not, I've seen a scan of a brain while a person is listening to their favourite piece of music. It could be a piece of pop music, it could be classical music, it could be anything. And the pleasure that we get from something that we listen to floods our brain with blood. And that is rejuvenating in the brain. So which is why, in general, musicians stay compos mentis. They really can use their brains till very late on in life.
No, that is so incredible. And you actually, how you talked about how music is a language, and oftentimes people that play instruments can actually speak it. You actually speak other languages.
Well, I lived in a Spanish-speaking country. I had a job. I was in the orchestra out there, so so I did, and I speak Spanish because I love the sound of it, and I'd always wanted to speak Spanish, so that was a perfect opportunity.
Yeah.
But apart from, I mean, that is literally speaking another language. But music is another language because that's how we converse with other people. You could have 20 people walk in this room now, all speaking another language to each other.
Yeah.
And we could all take out a piece of music, assuming that they're, good musicians, and we could just play that same piece, and all of a sudden we have this amazing connection.
Yeah, that's actually so true.
Yes, which is why you get so many foreign musicians travelling around the world. I saw a lot of the world earning good money doing it, being in different orchestras. That's the way. I lived abroad for 10 years.
A lot of people don't really consider going into music as a profession.
Yeah, and for good reason too, because there's really not that many jobs. You have to be very good or very lucky or both.
Right.
Particularly at this time with COVID. I mean, there's the face of music is going to change. I mean, I really don't know when I'm going to do my next orchestral concert.
Right.
And I'm not the only. There's thousands of us in that same position.
Yeah.
And that'll be for pop music too. It'll be for all the arts, I think.
Yeah. In terms of like the grading and that sort of thing, do you think that's important for parents?
Well,
or is it just a matter of, okay, just fall in love with it and just let it flow?
I think in general, there are exceptions, but I think in general, yes, it is good to go through the exam system because it gives a goal. If you haven't got the exam as a goal, you have to create another goal. Now, it could be just doing youth orchestras, do the concerts are goals, making sure that you play to your neighbours, to granny, whoever it is, who comes every couple of months. You've got something, you need a goal, you need stepping stones. Because like anything else in life, if we haven't got stepping stones, in general, we won't improve, I think.
Yeah.
You can't just rely on the love. And the love develops, the more you see, actually, sometimes on paper, wow, that's an achievement I've achieved. I don't, it's not the total thing, but I think it is part of the journey of becoming better.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's really interesting because, with Benjamin, for example, he started learning the piano, and because of COVID, we've been on lockdown. He hasn't had any lessons. We got this app that he sorts of fiddles around with, but it's motivating for him to kind of, because it has levels, and it gives stars.
And also, if a child starts having those goals from very early on, it does equip them very well for later on in life, when maybe they're not a professional musician, but they have to do a presentation at work, or they have to get a project in on time or something. So it's all adding to that sense of self-motivation and discipline.
Yes, 100%.
You have to, it's no good saying, I mean, people say, oh, he won't practice. I say, well, why would he? You're saying to a small child, go and practice. He has no concept of that. We have to teach them what practice is and why they need to practice principally.
100%, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't take a huge investment, actually, personal time investment. It just making sure that maybe there's 10 minutes every day where they go and get their instrument out, and they have to prepare what their teacher has said, or they have to work on it a little bit, and then they'll see over the days, and then they've got their lesson 7 days time or whatever, and then the next thing, and hopefully that builds up, and then there's a concert coming up, or I have very regular concerts for my pupils because they need that motivation, and it's really good for the little ones to see the bigger ones gaining, in the quality of they're playing, and that gives them another motivation. They're looking up to these bigger children, the parents are seeing it, and then maybe a neighbour comes to the concert and says, actually my cousin's got a child, or my own child would like to come, or they bring them along. And so it starts becoming a big network.
The face of music has changed depending on how much funding schools get. Could you talk a bit about that?
It goes from government to government, really. Some governments are what I would consider to be enlightened, and they will put more funding into music, or the arts in general, actually. Because I think that statistics pretty much show that if children have a focus and they're going to youth orchestra or some sort of tennis club or something in the evening, they're not going to eventually be hanging around the street. And we all know that kids who start hanging around the street, they will get into trouble eventually. Absolutely. They will do.
Yeah.
So it gives them a focus for that. In the 70s, a wonderful woman called Sheila Nelson, who is still alive actually, set up some big string groups in very poor areas, very poor working class areas. And that was tremendously successful. Those children became motivated, and that was a big funded string scheme. That a lot of that continues today actually. I was part of a big string scheme in Annerley, and we did that for a few years. Every child in that school ended up learning the violin.
Oh, wow.
And then it became on the parents if they wanted to continue, and unfortunately there wasn't a huge uptake, which was disappointing, but there was a tiny seed sown in that child, and they did amazing things. We went and did a concert at the Fairfield Halls.
Oh, nice.
You know, with all these, with all the a proper concert hall where these kids normally would not be doing anything like that. And I had all sorts of. It was completely mixed race, mixed religion. You know, there were Muslims there were Christians, there were atheists, everything. The whole thing, just the whole thing. And it was a very poor school. A lot of the children were from very disadvantaged backgrounds. But they all had one thing in common, which I noticed, and that was that when they were focused on, when we finally got on that stage, and there were 500 people in the audience, what they got out of that one day, and the staff were saying as well, this is worth a year's worth of maths lessons. Or what they got from finishing their piece, and then the applause. You know, they were, I mean, it was really teary, you know, it was really just incredible that they had actually gone the course. They'd
So it's so much bigger than learning an instrument.
So much bigger. It's huge.
Like there's so much character development. Huge. I mean, even being part of an orchestra, you're working as a team.
Yes, character development.
Yeah, it's big.
Yeah, absolutely. And also with university entry or college entry, you can get UCAS points now for doing graded.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think that the reason for that, and they're very, when they see somebody's actually got to grade 8, they're very keen on that person, even if they're not doing music, if they could be doing anything, accountancy or history or architecture, because it's a commitment they've made, and they can see that the commitment has come.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's come to fruition.
Yeah.
So it does seem a bit of a sort of a long journey, tiny little steps at the beginning, you know, the sound, you can only play one note, what's the point? There is a huge point. What's the point? When you have a baby and you look at this little thing, you can't do anything, you think, what's the point? Yeah. And then you look 20 years down the road.
It's the steps, isn't it?
It's all the steps. Most of the boroughs now will provide instruments, and if you are really struggling financially, free meals means you automatically get free lessons and free, they do these things, particularly in Bromley Borough. What Bromley? You're in?
So we're in Lewisham Borough.
I think Lewisham is pretty good as well, but most of the boroughs provide that. Not all of them, but most of them do. And
that's good to know.
Yeah, so there is financial help to be had. You know, I've got some amazing stories about children who were in a terrible place with the rest of the school, in a very bad. They were very vulnerable children, and they were always in trouble, but they always wanted to come to their violin lessons. And even when they were in a really bad mood, like they'd suddenly have a temper tantrum and go and sit in the corner, you know.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So, have you seen any differences between boys and girls in terms of the lessons that you've had?
Very early on, no. Then it changes, and boys. I've had, mind you, there seems to be a difference, and sometimes it's the boys go on and the girls go on. You know, they seem to have a slight difference, and then they come back together again. I would say sort of 16, 17. Because of course, you know, around that sort of age, you're dealing with a bit sort of, you know, hormones as well. You're dealing with, they get a bit bolshy. You know, they get a bit. They don't need to learn this, or they don't want to learn this. Not all of them, but in general, they do. They have a bit of a difficult time. And I also, the other thing about it, I think it's really important to get away from mum and dad.
Because you don't allow
I won't have parents in the
lesson. Okay, explain why.
Because it's a three-way thing. The kid's looking at the mum for approval. The mum's making sure that the kid is behaving, and I'm going, excuse me, you're paying me for a job here. Let me get on with it. I mean, I don't say that as really. That's what I'm thinking. And so I make that very clear. I say, but every month or every 6 weeks or something, we will prepare something for you to come in. So this again, by coincidence, is creating that atmosphere of having something a little bit special that you're working towards, so that I can I can begin that journey with them to a reason for practicing.
Yeah.
So we'll prepare things for mommy, and plus the parents see where their money's going.
My parents were never considered learning an instrument, like me learning an instrument. It just wasn't really, it just wasn't considered. It was like studies, typical West African parents, just focusing on studies, that's it. And if anything, they wouldn't necessarily have encouraged me to involve myself in anything that would take away in their minds from my studies. It was only when I got older and I was of secondary school age and I could enroll myself into things like drama club and that sort of thing that I did of my own back. But what would you say to parents who kind of think, oh no, we don't want it to compromise on their learning?
Well, I would say that on the face of it, it looks like that would be the situation, but after having had years and years, not just me personally, but the society of having children come out of lessons to go to music lessons, of seeing all the evidence shows that in fact there's something about music which refreshes and enhances our brain so that we can get more for less. So when they go back into the classroom to do their physics or their maths or whatever it is, geography, they can concentrate better. And that is an absolute fact, and all school teachers say they've noticed that. The children who do music have better concentration.
So what would you say about parents who sort of think, yeah, but they're not going to be a violinist when they get older?
I would say I agree with you. I agree with you. There's very, very few, but that is nothing to do with it. They do art at school, they love art, they're probably not going to be an artist, some of them might be. Okay. They do DT, design technology, a lot of them aren't going to be making things. They all do sports, and very few of them will come out being a sportsman, but it's good for them.
Yeah.
So all these things, the general education, including every subject, and some more than others, and of course I feel that music offers a lot, are the building blocks of creating a well-balanced, happy person. And some will want to be a violinist. I do have a few students who are now in the profession, but the vast majority just have grown up very, very glad that they did music, and they want their children now to do it.
Because you maintain relationships.
Yes.
I remember us having a conversation and you were saying that so many of your students actually would come back to you.
Yeah.
Like for therapy almost.
Yes.
like they finish their lessons, they're adults now, but they associate that music lesson time with just an opportunity, I guess, to unplug from the chaos or the hectic lifestyle that they're usually accustomed to, and just be in a safe place.
Yes.
Where they can.
Yeah, the one-to-one. I'm not their mum. They've got a way. I mean, yes. It's exactly that. It is a bit of a sort of a therapy thing through the medium of the music. Everybody enjoys seeing their toddler when the first time they stand up. They enjoy that. They enjoy seeing them grab onto furniture. I mean, I'm using obviously an analogy here with instruments as well, but seeing the little furtive pieces, at the beginning, and then becoming a bit better and enjoying that moment of learning. It's not just the end. It's not like, oh, get to that advance, please, come on, run across the room.
It's so true. It's so true.
You have to enjoy those precious moments, because once they're gone, they're gone. That's why people like taking a photograph of these little things. It takes its first step.
Yeah.
And I see that. What I do is I enjoy the journey with them, with my pupils, but I hear the future. So when someone goes, oh, that sounds awful, I say, no, it doesn't, because they're one of my pupils. But I say, yeah, but hear the future, hear how it's going to be.
The bigger picture.
Yeah, the bigger picture, but enjoy the little funny moments along the way. Love that. And just that lovely journey, and then you'll look back, because we all have to have. One of the things about old age is having wonderful memories.
Yes.
When we're sitting in our chair and we can no longer do things,
That's all we have.
If we have that wonderful, do you remember when Benjamin played that piece? Whatever, that first little thing, when he first got the violin out, whatever, when he first was able to do that little piece he played on the piano,
100%.
It's such pleasure. It's refreshing. It's one of the most, and you know, recreation is recreation. We recreate ourselves. It's one of the wonderful gifts that we've been given. You know, the recreation is the act of recreating your spirit, yourself, your energies.
I like that. Yeah, love that. So, are you taking on any more students? If anyone wants to watch this and thought, I want to contact this lady.
Well, I certainly would talk about it. I don't go out to people's houses, but I do have a large private practice at home. So we'll see how the lockdown. What happens with the lockdown?
Okay. So what I'm going to
but
do.
You know, if anybody wanted to discuss anything, or if they have an issue at school, or they want to know how to get in touch with the borough that they're in, I've got lots of information about that.
Awesome.
To help them.
So what I would do is I will put in some information regarding Lynn in the description box for those who may want to contact her. She's a fantastic teacher as well. So yeah, just putting that plug in, just to let you guys know. But thank you so much. I've learned a lot from this conversation actually, so it's been really insightful, and I really do hope that other people have learned a lot as well, as I'm sure you guys have. So thank you.
Okay, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks, girl. Okay. So, you know how you... okay.
Pastor said he can do this as an outtake. I think that'd be really good.
Yeah, that would be cool.